Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. My name's Clay McCormick, and with me, as always, is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
Good, man. I just did a deep dive into the history of the mullet. And,
excellent.
Trying to define exactly what a mullet is. It's funny. It changes slightly. But what I was trying to discover was, did they consciously try to want Nightwing to have a mullet as some kind of retro throwback, or did they give him long hair and think, it's kind of boring on top, let's just make it spiky up there, which made it look like a mullet?
Ooh, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that possibility.
Yeah. Well, I didn't find many answers, but I still think that there's a lot to talk about.
Well, with that in mind, the two episodes we're going to be doing today are Double Talk and You Scratch My Back. So we'll take a quick break, and we will start off with a Double Talk. All right, Double Talk, written by Robert Goodman, directed by Kurt Gaeta. And in this one, Arnold Wesker is released from Arkham Asylum, completely free of his Scarface persona. But Scarface's old gang, needing their old boss back, begin working to drive Wesker back to his old ways. We start off with a classic Batman the Animated Series dream sequence.
Yeah.
Which I actually...
a Clock King type of sequence, right?
Yeah, I actually really liked the dream sequence because it specifically was not a Batman dream sequence.
Yeah.
And they seem to do those a lot, and they're always kind of the same thing.
Yeah, the pearls, the gun, the alley, a screaming child. And
what this does, actually, is it sets up the episode pretty well, which is about the ventriloquist sort of... in a hangover from season 3 in the villain reformation episodes. This is about the ventriloquist freeing himself from his split persona Scarface. And I really liked this episode. I thought this was really well done. This one probably had the most heart that we've kind of said has been missing from this series so far.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. It gets a little bit kind of weird and convoluted about how they're exactly going about tricking him into Scarface being back, involving like a hired little person voiced by Billy Barty. And
yeah, for two meatheads who claim that they are not that smart and need their boss back to pull off some valuable crime, they're pretty good at audio systems or radio frequency, bait and switch, casting.
It was a fairly elaborate plan, and also they in doing that plan recognized that Scarface and the ventriloquist were part of a delusion of the ventriloquist, which I don't know, those guys seem pretty meatheadish, as you said, so I don't know if they would necessarily put that together, that they could attack him mentally,
right?
But overall, as a story, I thought it was great, and I think my favorite thing in it is actually Batman. Because they show a side of Batman that I don't think people tap into enough, which is that he is actually being very supportive of Wesker and his entrance back into the real world by Wayne Tech or Wayne Enterprises is giving him a job, and Batman keeps kind of checking in on him and stuff. And I think the people who criticize Batman for just beating up mentally challenged people, I forget about stuff like this where they show Batman being more than just, a punch machine.
I think this is the third time where you've had Bruce Wayne, his company is hired accidentally or purposefully or with someone that turns into a super criminal. With Jervis Tetch, Mad Hatter, I think that was a Wayne company. I think he also owned the company that the Riddler started at, right? And then now we have the ventriloquist handing out mail to people in the office. Well, and I always like Bruce Wayne checking in on them and showing like a warm hand. It is interesting that he's able to show warmth and he's more human when he's not dressed as a bat, which I know sounds fucking obvious. But you forget that he has this warm side. But of course, he's probably not going to he's not going to be in the mood to be warm when he's dressed as Batman.
Right, yeah. The entire concept of Batman is not exactly warmth.
What? That cape was made to be hugged.
Yeah. But yeah, I think showing him actually kind of shepherd it, like it's different from the way that they approached Poison Ivy in that episode, where he's spying on her, waiting for her to snap again. This one he's actually like shepherding the reformation. Maybe he learned his lesson from being a dick to Poison Ivy last time. It's
funny because in the next one with Catwoman, he's certainly not. He's not going to change his mind on the fact that Catwoman's a villain. Like he certainly. Right. He seems pretty immobile on that. Yeah. Well, she doesn't give him much reason to change his mind. But no, that's true. Yeah, well, I love the animation on. I like the redesign of the Mad Hatter. The Scarface and the Ventriloquist too. I like that he's got like these simple dot eyes, and he looks like his head is shaped like a big eraser.
I was thinking he looks like. Do you remember the character, the comic character, the Flaming Carrot?
Yeah.
And he was just like, he had the big wide end of the carrot as like the top of his head. That's kind of what he looks like. He looks like the wide end of a carrot with like a couple little pieces
Bob Burton
of hair.
who did that, and then he did Mystery Men.
Oh, did he? No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yep. And then he blew all his money on drugs and strippers, I think.
Excellent. It's the way to go. That's what we're all aiming for in the comic business.
Well, comics is it's not a career where you're guaranteed to make a lot of money. So when success hits you, it's like you really don't know what to do with that.
Right.
It's like when you watch documentaries on basketball players who suddenly are millionaires and they end up getting taken advantage of, investing with the wrong people. I think with comics, that's pretty ubiquitous. Well, when it happens in comics, it usually goes bad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but hey, those action figures ain't gonna buy themselves, man.
I mean, it's rare when you're like, this comic book creator made a fortune overnight and generally kept his head on straight and didn't let it go to his head. He bought one fancy car, but not too much. He didn't do any drugs, not into strippers, and he's living with his wife outside of Kansas City right now.
Yeah, most people, I think, who end up millionaires overnight don't handle it very well, regardless of profession.
That's true. Yeah, I always, because I'm in this culture, I tend to think of creative people as, with only one foot in reality already. So for me, it's just, I just feel like it's countdown till, this goes really badly for them. But maybe I'm just a cynic.
Yeah, well, I for one look forward to having enough money to develop a crippling Fabergé egg habit. So
yeah, what's interesting about the Ninja Turtles guys is they managed to stay very grounded. I think one guy still has the same pocket protector that he's been wearing all these years. Like this, I'm not even joking.
Didn't Kevin Eastman buy a tank?
Okay, well then the other one went crazy and started buying a lot of shit. Yeah, he bought a tank. He bought all of his friends in the studio. So the studio. Sorry, I know we're getting off topic. But I know one of the guys who helped him develop Ninja Turtles. Mm-hmm. They had a studio, and he hired 5 of his friends to do all the box art and package artwork for all the action figures back in the late 80s. And he paid them pretty well, and he bought them gifts all the time. My friend, he bought like a rare motorcycle that I've never seen outside of a museum.
Wow.
This is like a hot pink Honda that they only made a handful of, and he has one in his garage. And like, it's crazy. Like the stories are, these guys are extremely generous. But with that, they also bought tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah, you got to have some fun. If you got buy tank money and you don't buy a tank, the only person who looks like a fool there is you. So,
yeah. I mean, when you go to the tank store and they're like, "So what are you looking to blow up?"
Yeah. But yeah, back to the episode. No tanks in the episode, unfortunately. Overall, I like the design of Scarface. I like his redesign. Not messing with it too much with the puppet. The puppet's more or less the same. It's just a little bit blockier.
Did he have a unibrow before?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, Ventriloquist is a bit more of a drastic redesign. But yeah, I like that. He looks very meek and fragile.
Yeah.
But I thought I was not expecting an episode this good from Scarface in the Ventriloquist.
Yeah.
Because I like the character, but the gimmick is kind of the gimmick.
Right.
And they found a really nice way to do a reformation story. This might be the first villain reformation story that actually works, because at the end of the story, you've got this great moment where the ventriloquist is placed between Scarface and Batman, and he's got a Tommy gun, and he chooses to shoot Scarface and finally rid himself of Scarface.
This is kind of like the happy ending for Scarface. Not for him, for the ventriloquist.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think there's any more Scarface episodes in this season, but this might be the finale for him in a way, and I think it's a good ending. Yeah,
I do too. It reminded me a little bit of, it made me think of, I think I've probably brought this up the first Scarface episode, but my first introduction to Scarface in the comics was through the Nightfall story.
With the puppet?
Yes, and in that one, puppet? In that one, I believe he's just broken out of Arkham Asylum, so he doesn't have access to the Scarface puppet, so he's got a sock puppet. And I was just thinking of that, where I was like, well, this is going to take until it doesn't, and then he's going to have a sock puppet, and he's going to start building his crime empire on the back of the sock puppet.
What did he call the sock puppet?
I don't remember. Probably Socko or something.
I think you're right. I think it was Socko.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Sockface. Sorry. I don't know why that's funny. As a child, maybe he had Sockface, and then as he got to an adult, he could afford more dangerous wood-shaped object.
Sock man.
Sock. It's funny. I really like the character Rhino as the big henchman that's like way bigger than Batman. I noticed in this episode, though, he's slimmed down a bit till Batman's just a little bit shorter than him.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a good job, because Batman pummels the fuck out of this guy with punches and whatnot at the beginning, and the guy doesn't really go down. So I think they still show him as being, pretty solid. And I love how Batman does the back fist without looking twice to the guy, the other guy.
Do it till it doesn't work, I guess.
When did the fist without looking thing start? Was that in 89?
That's the first time I've ever seen it, yeah.
Okay. So Adam West didn't do it? I mean, you kind of need to see it with motion. You can't really do that in a comic as well.
Yeah. I don't think Adam West ever did that. I always thought that scene in the 89 Batman was funny, because, like, what if he turned around and he had done it to, like, Commissioner Gordon by accident?
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that'd be a good, like, P and Keel sketch that they didn't make.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that fight scene animation was good. I liked this one as a change up from the other kind of reform episodes, because Batman isn't being a cynic about it. He is actively rooting for Wesker, and he's not like, because you could see this easily going the other way, where he's keeping tabs on him. Batman's keeping tabs on him, and he's seeing what's happening, and he's going, "Oh, okay, he's slipping back into the Scarface thing. I got to take him down." But he doesn't. He has more compassion than that.
I agree that I really like this episode, but if you had to make it a 5 out of 5, what would you add to it?
I don't know.
I think you're right that I need to know. I would like a little bit of how they were able to put the speaker in his house. Like, show me the bad guys, at least their efforts to try to re-win Scarface over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just assume that they did all that stuff, but you don't actually see how they did it.
Yeah, they don't even really admit to it, I don't think, do they?
No, that was what was a little weak to me. Was they didn't deny it, but it was obviously them, and you're just expected to just believe it, and the story moves forward. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really know. Maybe spend a little bit more time with. I think what might push it a little bit further is if someone like, usually it would be Robin, but I guess in this case it would be Batgirl, was actually more suspicious and doubtful of the ventriloquist, and Batman actually has to maintain his faith in this guy that he's going to pull it through, and that someone's trying to pull one over on him.
Yeah.
I think you could probably get into that stuff a little bit more.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would fix that. I don't know what else I would do. I agree. This is like a 4 for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it's so tight. I mean, it's not really too much wrong with it, but I don't know why it's not a 5.
Yeah, I think it feels a little truncated at the end in the way that some of the other ones have felt too, where it's like kind of the story's over and then the story's just over.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Because he shoots up Scarface, and then the next scene he's like having coffee with his tiny landlady, and then he's like, "Yep, that's crazy. No more Scarface." End of episode. So
why was I like that? There's 2 little people in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they decided to make the landlady a little person as well.
Yeah, it's an odd choice only because it feels like there must have been some sort. It feels like an early draft red herring or something that they just never changed. I thought,
because for at first I'm like, that landlady isn't running around with a machine gun shooting at Batman, is she?
Right. Well, actually, you know what you could do if you wanted to flesh it out a little bit more. You could always imply there's some sort of romantic relationship brewing between him and the landlady. So then when you lean into the Scarface stuff, it's like, oh no, is she just pulling one over on him?
Well, he has to have a piece of his body inside of a tiny person one way or the other.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh, come on. You weren't thinking that?
I can very safely say that I was not thinking that.
Oh, maybe they added her in because the only is it little person or tiny person?
I think you're well past the line at this point either way, so
okay.
Say whatever you want.
But they have one little person in there as a bad guy. Maybe they didn't want to just cast type like to suggest all little people are bad, so they wanted to throw a good one in there too to show both sides. Like maybe it was like an early attempt to be woke and not to get canceled for for improperly handling little people. I really tried to say that as politically correct as I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, him having sex with the landlady is I knew what I was doing there. But the rest of that, I was really on the up and up.
Yeah, I bet. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's because you obviously can't see that character without thinking of some parallel to Scarface. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that's great, I don't know. But it seems like that's the reason that those characters are in there. Obviously, because one of them is pretending to be Scarface. But yeah, it is an interesting ad. I think you could have done more with that landlady character if you had a little bit more time to expand on their relationship. Because she's only in that one scene, and then at the end they're palling around having coffee or whatever, and it's not like the two of them have gone through this thing together. Yeah. She kind of disappears after that first scene, and then she's just there at the end. Yeah. It's like
maybe he wants to date a spinner.
Maybe.
So what would I draw?
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
This will be the last episode of this show.
So you're gonna go 4 out of 5 on this one?
Yeah. What would you draw on this one?
Nothing really stood out to me. There was a scene where I don't like dream sequence stuff. I don't know if I've said that before, but the big things I don't like drawing in comics are dream sequences, magic power type shit, and people playing poker. Like the 3 things that I just hate doing. Mm-hmm. So for me, the dream sequence, I thought it was a good dream sequence, but I don't want to draw that. So maybe that'll be my answer for this one. It'll be what don't I want to draw? There was a couple shots. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There was a shot where he's asleep in bed and he wakes up and he's looking at the phone or something. There was a lot of dark shadows, and they did a good job. When you have a darkened room in a noir movie, you have the blinders in the window casting strange shadows everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you have this like these prison lines, sort of. They can kind of go anywhere you want, honestly.
Right.
I notice in comics when it's done the most successfully, you sort of throw physics out the window and you just draw these stripy lines of the window anywhere you want.
Yeah.
At a diagonal, cast against the door, whatever, against a chair. It's really effective, and it doesn't have to make logical sense. And I always have a fun time with that, so maybe I would draw that.
Yeah,
as lame as that answer is.
I remember I was drawing a sequence like that once, and I was really trying to stick to the physics of it, being like, okay, so if the window's over here, then these things are going to cast onto the floor. Shit, I want them to cast onto the wall, not the floor. And then at a certain point, I was just like, I don't give a shit. Just put them where you want them. Nobody cares.
Yeah, I mean, to have a diagonal, to take the shape of those blinders against the wall, to have those be at a diagonal, I think the window would have to be at a diagonal, which it's not. Mm-hmm. So I don't. Yeah, you'd have to Mr. Wizard some experiments, whatever. But I feel like it's just most effective when you just say, "Fuck it, this is what's going to look good." Everyone knows that this is the shadow from the window.
Right.
Let's just have some fun.
Yeah. There's a God, I can't remember what the hell it's from, but there's a Jim Steranko drawing where it's someone coming in. It's a big double-page spread, I think, of someone coming in through a door with a flashlight shining into the room. Mm-hmm. And it's a fantastic black and white drawing, really great shadows and stuff. And then I was looking at it and I was like, this lighting doesn't make any sense. He's just going for the graphic impact. He's not paying attention to like what actually the light would be doing in this situation. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't care because it just looks great. I don't think it would have been improved if he had done it correctly, you know?
Right, yeah. All right, so you can get diagonal lines. Forget what I said before. I'm looking at some other stuff here, yeah. I'm also looking up your Steranko to see if I can find it. And I see a lot of good Steranko. I don't see that panel.
I'll see if I can find it at some point, and I'll send it over. But yeah, there's a fine line in art or in comics art between how closely you have to stick to reality, even if you're drawing something that is supposed to be realistic, because there's I forget who said it, but when it comes to perspective, the saying is, if it looks right, it probably is. Yeah. And yeah.
It's funny. I'm a perspective nerd. As loose as my stuff is, I just really focus a lot on the math of laying things out and measuring things properly. Like, maybe some people are surprised to know, because my stuff can get really loose, that my perspective is actually pretty tight and planned. Then I have my shortcuts and tricks that I use, which I've taught you and anyone who will listen, honestly. But yeah, when I see a pan, like, I can usually spot incorrect perspective faster than most artists. It's just been kind of my jam. I don't like that I'm like this, but it's just who I am. And the one thing that gets me the most is ellipses drawn incorrectly.
Sure.
And if you draw a really nice background, but the characters are a character way off in the distance is on the same plane as a character close to the camera, I'll know immediately if you measured correctly, because sometimes if you put them back to back, you'll realize that one of them is way off.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, comics isn't really about perspective. It's about storytelling and clarity. So I don't think perspective is that important. Well, it's not as important to most artists as it is to me, and I think that's okay. Yeah,
I think it varies style to style, because I think it's important. Like I said, it's important that it looks solid.
Yeah.
And doesn't uncanny valley its way out of being a believable image.
Yeah. Do you ever have a thumbnail sketch you do for a splash or a cover or even a panel where your stupid little quick sketch where you're barely paying attention, you manage to catch something. You caught a movement or an angle or an arc, and no matter how much you try to transfer it to the actual board that's bigger, you just can't seem like, what the fuck did I do in this tiny sketch that's working so well? And one of the things that will disrupt that for me is if I have this great layout I did in a thumbnail, but when I try to apply a real perspective to it, it falls apart. Yeah.
Yep. No, I know like that 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the top of the building looks good up there, but it literally can't be there if the bottom of the street looks like this.
Right.
When you mash them up, the perspective doesn't make any sense at all. So something's got to give here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've had plenty of those where you do a quick sketch and you're like, yeah, this is really going to work, and then you put it down on the page and you're like, I don't know what happened, but this just did not work. I was doing this this piece for a John Carpenter's Halloween art book that is I don't know when it's supposed to come out. It's not supposed to come out for a while. I actually don't even know if my piece got accepted, but
Right.
I had planned this piece that I wanted to do based off this old painting that I did, and it's this low shot of a hallway with, in this version, it would have been Michael Myers walking down the hallway. There's a light coming up from the floor below, casting through the banister, which throws those diagonal lines up onto the wall, and just lights Michael Myers a little bit by like the his face, his turned head, and like the edge of his body. And then on the other side, you see a doorway, and it's a doorway to a bedroom. Inside the bedroom, you can see Laurie Strode on the bed, like covering her mouth, trying to stay quiet. And I did this sketch, and everything worked in the sketch. I was like, oh, this looks great. Okay, this is going to work. And then I actually tried to map it out and like do a tighter version and apply the perspective of the hallway that he's in versus where the door would fall compared to where he was and where she would be inside this room and where the light would come. Yeah. And it just completely fell apart. I think I did like 4 or 5 different versions of it, and I just could not get it to work. And so finally I had to ended up doing something else. It was a bummer because it was a concept that I really liked.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah. It's fun, and the more you focus and obsess about it, the more risk you run of it getting stale and overthinking it. Like Bill Sienkiewicz is able to pull off some stuff like that where it still feels fresh and spontaneous. And you wonder how much planning did he actually do? Because I don't know about you, but if I plan too much, it starts to tip over where it stops being interesting.
Yeah.
The drawing itself doesn't look as interesting. Like there's a fine line between spontaneity, messiness, and organization, somewhere in there, and you want to kind of hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I got into the weeds of like, well, the perspective on the figure doesn't look. What if I put like a busted up pumpkin in the foreground? Okay, well, if I want
that'll trick.
Yeah, I would say so I cover his feet so you can't see exactly where he's standing. But then I was like, shit, how big of a pumpkin is this gonna be? Because this is a really low shot, so it's gonna have to be really close to the camera. This pumpkin's gonna take up like a third of the painting. It just couldn't get it to work. It was really a bummer.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, do you ever, if you're drawing a panel of you got a really intensive 2-point perspective background of a city street, and then you draw a guy or a character in the foreground, and they both look really good, but suddenly you realize that it's not lining up. You either have to erase the guy and redraw him, or you need to erase the background and redraw that.
Right.
What do you do?
I feel like most of the time I would redraw the guy because I hate laying out perspective so much that if I got that right, I would not touch it if I didn't have to. Yeah.
And if you do redraw a background, you got a lot of erasing, a lot of smudging, and it's you're in for a mess. And maybe you can salvage it, maybe it'll be okay, but it's just a large commitment to go back and redo perspective lines.
Right, yeah.
This is where being a digital artist makes sense to me, is not only are you using a program to lay out your grid anyway, which is cheating, cough, cough.
Hey, that's what I do.
You realize...
anybody wants to cheat that way, more power to you.
Well, like Manga Studio, doesn't it just lay out grid lines for you? You just have to move the vanishing points?
Yeah, you set up, you still have to pick a horizon line and you pick your vanishing points and stuff, but yeah, it makes the grid for you, yeah.
But our friend Corinne does this, and like she inks, and it locks her lines onto the grid for you. Like even if you try to screw up, it's still going to lock your inking to the z-axis or whatever axis you're inking, and it's amazing. And it's all 100% correct. But it's so correct that I mean, she does it well. But I've seen other artists do it where it feels so correct that it feels stale. And I feel like I'm looking at a computer drawing and not like an organic drawing by a human.
Yeah. Yeah, what I do is I do the perspective work digitally, and then I do the finish on paper. So if I lay it out and it doesn't work when I put it on the page, then I have to redo it again on the page. So I try to do it's just because you end up erasing so much, and then your lines end up getting mixed up as to what goes to where. Like that's why I have so much respect for someone like Walt Simonson, who is just he's a master comic book artist, but the number of lines he has on a page is like incomprehensible to me. Of how he puts down so many lines and keeps track of what they do, where they go, and what they're all for, the different thicknesses and stuff. And this isn't just perspective. This is like, special rendering, special effects lines and shit like that. It's unbelievable. I don't know how. I just don't have the mental capacity to keep track of all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm happy to try to teach artists perspective and tricks all the time. And it usually doesn't work. Most of the artists will listen and they'll get it in the moment, but they're not able to repeat it afterwards. And I don't know if I'm teaching wrong or if one of my students, Steve-O, you know him, Stephen Green is a friend of ours, and he said to me once, he's like, I think it's nice that you're trying to help artists be better at perspective, but I just think your brain is wired in a way that's just different. Like you have a very good 3D rendering system in your head. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, and I'm flattered, and it's a compliment, of course, but I think about what he said a lot, and as I try to teach people over and over again the perspective stuff, and they just don't get it, it's just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm on the spectrum or something when it comes to that. But,
no, I think it's just, it's something that you have an expertise in that is not, like, you have an understanding of it that is more advanced than a lot of people. So I don't think it's, you have to feel bad about it. It's just something you got to think about. And like, for instance, Ted Williams, one of the best hitters in the history of baseball, terrible coach. And I'm not saying you're a terrible coach, but I'm just using that as an example.
I'm pretty sure that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not. Ahead. No, because I think I had to ask you a couple times to go over the perspective stuff because it wasn't quite clicking in my brain. But like the ellipses stuff. Yeah. I got that immediately, and I was like, okay. I see how this stuff works. I see how, for the most part, I got most of it. Like, the more advanced stuff I still have trouble with, but...
the tick mark system, that's a hard one for people to get. I think I've shown you that before. Yeah, that one... There's a way to... For any artist listening, there's a way to... if you ask me to show you in person, it's not going to matter, because I'm horrible at teaching people, apparently. But what you do is you kind of start in the middle of the panel, you draw a building, for example, and if you use 2-point, 3-point perspective, it doesn't matter. As long as you draw that correct, you can expand your perspective out and save that building, but lock in the rest of the city to what that building did. There's a way to do that, but you have to eyeball it very clearly for it to work. If that first building you draw is wrong, this won't work.
Right.
That's the best way I can do to describe it. It won't make any sense unless you're actually seeing me do it. There's a video on YouTube, actually. If you Google me inking, there's an old one that's like 12 years old where I kind of talk through this. So good luck.
It seems a little bit confusing, but then once it clicks and you realize what you're going to, like, oh, okay. So you draw the building, then you determine the horizon line based on that building that you drew, and then measure things out and stuff. Yeah. But
the biggest problem teaching people that is they don't care about backgrounds in the way that I do, and that's okay. I can teach people how to draw cars, but if they're not into cars, if they're not fans of it in some way, they don't have any warm feelings around vehicles, they're just not gonna want to do it very often, and that's fine. Like when people say, when you have to draw an alleyway in Batman, most people will groan, but I enjoy the challenge a lot. I think I'm like, that's a good day for me. If I can use a lot of blacks and shadows and draw the perspective, like I'm having a ball. But most people don't want to draw that. They would rather draw, Batman somewhere else, I guess. So if the interest in the subject isn't there, there's only so much teaching that I could do.
Right. Yeah. That's,
but I think, understanding perspective allows you to enjoy it if you can get it to click. Like when I start, I'm sorry I interrupted you again. No. But when I started to use ellipses correctly, and suddenly my car tires looked real, I was like, whoa, this is fun. And I started enjoying drawing the other parts of the cars. So I'm hoping that the math gauges interest in artists, but if they're not interested, they're not interested, and you really can't teach anything.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's not going to be fun if it's not clicking with you, but once it clicks, it opens up a new door. I have a better understanding of that stuff than I did years ago, but I still don't particularly enjoy it.
That's okay. It's all right.
But I know I have a better understanding of how to do it when I need to do it.
When you drew Redline, I remember you had a moon rover or truck or something like that, right? I think you sent it to me, and did I add a few tweaks to it just to make it? Did I do something to help at all? I forget.
I can't remember. It wouldn't surprise me if you did, because I had to draw an SUV kind of military vehicle kind of thing. And yes, you did. Yeah, because I've never been like a car designer artist, so I had to design this truck, and I was like, ugh, this doesn't look very good. And you're like, well, you crunch this down, it'll look more aggressive, and you move the wheels a little bit more. I'm like, oh yeah, obviously now it looks great.
You designed it so it was symmetrical from the side, so the front and the back looked the same. They each had like this downward slope angle, I think. And I took the front, and I'm like, we'll make this more of a right angle grill, move the front tires up to the front bumper. That makes cars look more aggressive. And I think just those tweaks. And I think you had already drawn it a bit, and you're like, that's nice. It's a little bit too late because I already inked this thing. So thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, I had to draw. There was one angle. I know this is all riveting radio, but there was one angle I had to do this like 3-point downward shot of the car like taking a drastic turn, and I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this because I understand ellipses. I completely fucking blew it, and I think I drew it twice and it just never worked, so I just put some smoke in, and I'm like, that'll have to work.
Oh my god, yeah, smoke. Or if I'm drawing the front end of a motorcycle and I don't have an ellipse large enough, I will draw debris in front of the wheel in certain spots so I can give myself a breaking point and shift my ellipse. So there's like a random rock in front of this wheel, but it allows me to break the line and move my ellipse a bit and then sort of fudge it.
Yeah, that's it. I'm actually really glad you said that, because I have wondered that in the past. Where I'm like, I've got the big set of ellipses and I don't have one that's big enough for this. How does he do this shit? And I can't I can't pull a line smooth enough to fake it. I don't know what he does to do this.
Yeah. I'm amazed by people that freehand ellipses. Because Mignola does that. A lot of artists do it. And Toth did it. And I got these, looking at old Zorro art, like Zorro's hat is like 3 ellipses. And it always looks so good. And even though the line is a little bit buttery and jagged, it just works, Yeah. Whereas my ellipses are like NASA levels of clean because I have all the tools and I know, but because I ink everything else so loose and gross, it makes those clean lines. You don't even notice the clean lines. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, pulling it back to Batman.
I don't think is anybody listening right now.
Bore everybody to death. Well, to continue boring people, the thing I would draw actually was my favorite action sequence in this was the one where we get to see where they build or at least house all of the gigantic statues in Gotham City.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would probably want to draw that place. It's just full of giant. If Mike Mignola drew an adaptation of this episode, most of it would take place in that room, I think.
There was one big statue, because you first get out of the room and you're like, whoa, they're in a very dramatic place. And the statue looks like the judge from a later episode.
Yes,
where
he does. Yes.
Becomes a third character. Mm-hmm. It looks like a mix between the judge and the Batman. The
Phantasm?
That movie. Thank you. Yes, the Phantasm.
Yeah, yeah. It's a cool sequence. It's nice to see where they house all that stuff. So that's probably where I would want to draw. I would draw Brandon Brandanowitz going through there, taking stock of all the statues, because he probably has a hand in that too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does he own that, or is he about to buy it?
Yeah, he's looking into it to see whether or not it's worth it.
It's potential. I like how you started to do his voice a little bit towards the end of your sentence.
Anyway, I'm going to give this one a 4. Yep. You also a 4?
Yep, same.
So I think that's going to do it for Double Talk. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back with You Scratch My Back. All right, you scratch my back. There's so many different ways you can say this, depending on what word you want to emphasize.
Yeah, the way you said it was, you scratch my back.
You scratch my back. You scratch my back. You scratch my back. You scratch my back. Written by Hilary J. Bader, directed by Butch Lukic. Lukic? Sure. In an effort to further distance himself from Batman, Nightwing tries to go it alone and stop a smuggling ring and gets unexpected help from the seductive Catwoman, who attempts a somewhat sensual relationship with him. This this has one of my favorite bits of trivia, which is that I guess there is a comic story in Batman Gotham Adventures that explains why Catwoman's hair color changes. And it's because she's a natural brunette who used to dye her hair blonde until she found out her preferred brand of hair dye was tested on animals. So she permanently scarred the firm's owner and never dyed her hair again.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see that episode.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do that. It's a kind of an interesting story. Needless backstory, but what the hell?
Yeah. Her new look that's more like Audrey Hepburn is nice too. I think I do prefer the blonde, but I think it's just because I got used to the blonde.
That's interesting, yeah, because I've always found blonde Catwoman to be kind of jarring.
Okay.
Because I guess I've just never, the only blonde Catwoman I can think of is Michelle Pfeiffer and the cartoon. All the other versions I've seen, I think she's a brunette.
You're right, honestly. I mean, black hair makes sense. Black cats, it totally works. The blonde doesn't make sense at all. I get it. But I think just because I'm so used to the first 3 seasons, I definitely prefer her old costume with the gray.
Yeah.
This black one is just too simple, and her face is like a weird blue color. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. It seems almost like they wanted to go for the Michelle Pfeiffer thing, but then they were like, well, if we put all these stitches on, that's going to be a pain in the ass to animate, so we probably shouldn't do that.
It needed like one more element,
yeah,
one more design element. Like I like clean too, but come on, it's just I wouldn't even want this action figure because there's fucking nothing to look at. You know?
Yeah, it's a fully black costume. It's actually really fascinating to me when you think about how different costumes work in different media, because like I think a fully black Batman costume works great for live action. I don't think it works very good in comics. Like there was a period in the 90s where they had changed his comic costume to fully black during like the No Man's Land era.
Yeah.
And it just never sat right with me for some reason. I don't know if it was the coloring or what, or if it was just that like the people who were drawing it weren't taking advantage of what you could do with a fully black costume. I don't know. But like with Catwoman, I feel like her fully black costume works great in the comic. But in this, it doesn't. And I think part of the reason is in the comics, you can really get into, most of the time she's depicted with like, it's like some sort of shiny leather or something. Yeah. So you can get into a lot of like light sources and stuff. Where in this, it's just flat black.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the detail in the comic book art isn't in the costume. It's in the rendering of the highlights.
Right.
It's the shadowing. It's the creases when she, bends her leg or whatever. It's the highlight around her chest, whatever. Like, that stuff, there's a lot to look at. Here, because it's just flat, there's nothing to look at.
Right.
And, I feel like they improved this before it was still a little bit half-baked.
Well, it's an interesting comparison to Nightwing, actually, because Nightwing's costume is more or less exactly the same as Catwoman's, except it's got a big blue bird on it.
But and the mask and his hair does add more design elements. I think it holds your attention a lot better.
Yeah, I think
But yeah, let's get into his hair.
Yeah, well, I had covered this briefly. I think I mentioned it, but one of my favorite Nightwing bits of trivia, which I think at this point might have been retconned out, is that he's actually picks the name Nightwing as a reference to a legendary vigilante from Krypton, whose story inspires him. Yeah, it's which at the time I think originally in concept is great because that's a huge fuck you to Batman.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But I think since they've probably ironed that out and it's just the name that he picks. But
so let's get this mullet stuff out of the way.
Yeah,
so
please
we can talk about the rest of the episode.
Enlighten us about the mullet.
So I went looking for interviews with Bruce Timm or Paul Dini with, I mixed Nightwing, mullet, Paul Dini, and I could not find anyone ever asking them directly, why did you give Nightwing a mullet?
You found a really interesting Halloween picture of one year from Paul Dini where he was dressed as Nightwing with a mullet, though, I bet.
I wish. But so there's I think there's either two things that happen with this. One is they wanted to give him long hair, But they didn't want it to be like the Crow, where it was hanging down the side of his face, because you have to draw it swinging and moving and blah, blah, blah. And it makes the character look really fast if his hair just kind of goes back. So I get wanting to do that. But if you do that without zhuzhing up the top part with something, I think that they were like, all right, well, let's give it a couple of zigzags at the top of his head. But that looks like his hair is now a mullet. And I don't know. I think in certain angles, the concept art for this probably looked pretty good. But when you had to see it in motion, it started to be clear, like, oh my God, this just looks like a mullet. But I don't know if they actually said in the board meeting, let's give him a mullet, or if they said, let's just give him long hair, but we'll make it like spiky on the top.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, because the top part is kind of like it's like a little bit of a triangle kind of pompadour kind of thing going on.
Like Philip J. Fry has one too.
Yes, he looks like Fry from Futurama. But like in the comics at this point, did he also have long hair in the comics?
So then this gets into the second part. I sent you a list, Clay. There's a CBR article about mullets in the 80s and 90s and characters who had them. And I started to realize, too, that what is actually a mullet is different for each of us. So why don't you tell me, Clay, what do you think a mullet actually is?
Party in the front, business in the back.
But how short is the front?
Yeah, that's tough. I would say like the true mullet is like more of a buzz cut kind of top.
Yes.
If you want to see a true mullet, look up Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 10. Then you've got a true mullet.
I think I agree. The top part has to be no more than 2 inches long. It has to be maybe even an inch long. And then the back has to be very clearly much longer and often cut to a clean line that's like touching the shoulders or whatever. That is a mullet. But if you let that haircut grow out and now the top of your hair is 5 inches long, then the back is now 12 inches long, is that still a mullet?
Ooh, I don't know.
Because you remember the Death of Superman era, just because we all remember that moment. Back when we had the Death of Superman, he had that kind of haircut where it was sort of long. It was long all around, but it seemed slightly longer in the back than it was on the top. But the top was still long enough where you could have his spit curl coming down to his nose.
I know a lot of people.
Is that a mullet?
A lot of people refer to that as mullet Superman, but I've always just thought of it as long hair. Yeah. Yeah.
So that is a lot of the in this article. A lot of their examples I don't think are mullets. I just think it's long hair. That's when artists render it. You kind of want to draw some short parts of the hair that come right by the eye, because that was just a thing in the 90s. But when you do that, you're saying the top part of the hair is only 4 inches long, and the rest of it is so flowy. Well, now it looks like a mullet because of the way the artist rendered it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Long hair doesn't have to be uniform. There's layering involved. You know.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to all be the same length.
Yeah. So did this surprised me too? I never thought of this character having a mullet, but Bishop from the X-Men,
yes,
according to this article, had a mullet.
I would say yes, that Bishop had a mullet. Yes, because that's a very like flat top on the top with like just flowing out of the back. So I would call that a mullet. Yes.
I didn't think it was a buzz flat top. I thought it was just combed back and sort of matted, and then the rest of it was like Jerry curls in the back, right?
I think it still counts. I think if it's presented that short.
I'm looking up Bishop right now. Keep talking.
I think if it's presented that short, you know, and formed into that shape with the long stuff coming out of the back, I think that counts.
So I'm gonna go with Jim Lee here. Jim, how did you draw Bishop?
I don't think he drew Bishop that much. I think it was mostly Wills, I think, wasn't it?
No, when they redid the X-Men with Claremont, I know that Bishop was in it. A lot of these covers, like X-Men number 4 is Gambit versus Bishop. Sorry, X-Men number 8.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, he gave Bishop some spit curls, which to me says, yeah, I think you're right. Technically, that's a mullet. Fuck. Now in the cartoon, it's definitely a mullet because there are 2 little spit curls that are like halfway down his forehead. Yeah, that's certainly a mullet.
Okay.
All right,
yeah.
You're right. I'm wrong, everybody. It's definitely a mullet. But it looks good when Jim draws it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking at that cover now. Yeah, I mean, that works for me. I mean, if he's got... Yeah. I guess it depends, because if it's like... we got to see the back. I mean, if he's got the back in like a top ponytail, you know, like a small ponytail in the back, then I don't think it's a mullet.
Right.
But if it's just like a short top,
I propose that what we were looking at is actually a third type of haircut that's called like superhero long hair from the 90s or something else. But if you think about like Shatterstar and some of these Rob Liefeld characters, they had hair that was 4 feet long in a top knot, but there was always a few bits in the front that hung down right over the eyebrows. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to, so it's like, it is probably a mullet if you had it in real life, but when you draw it with comics, it's not a mullet. It just has short bits, which make it look more extreme.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a picture right now of Colin Farrell from the Miami Vice movie.
Okay.
And like, this is not a mullet. This is just long hair that comes out on the bottom, and then he just like greases the top back. But I can see why people would say it's a mullet.
If you drew that in a comic, it might look like a mullet.
Yes.
Because the way you'd have to render that. And I'd say the same with like...
And I would also like to say I would love to draw this in a comic if anybody has the rights to Miami Vice and wants to...
So is Kurt Russell's hair a mullet?
I don't care. It's
Kurt Russell.
Inflappable, whatever it is. It's actually it flaps very nicely depending on the breeze. But anyway, that's enough hair talk. I think we should probably talk about the episode.
Okay, fine, yeah. But I will add one last thing. There was an interview I uncovered that had the voice actor who played Robin in Nightwing, and he said in an interview that I love the character. I don't know why they gave him a mullet.
Yeah.
So at least he acknowledges that it is a mullet.
Yeah, I think for the sake of argument, we have to come down on mullet for the cartoon.
But did they do it as a nod? Because there are renderings of Nightwing from the late 80s where it is a mullet. There's no way around it. It's just a fucking mullet. And did they do this as a way to nod to that? Did they not know that mullets weren't cool? I mean... Well,
if they wanted to nod to the comic, they should have given him the Disco 70s collar.
Yeah, honestly, that held up over time better than mullets.
At
least Disco like goes for it, you know?
I always found that design really funny because he's got this big flashy collar, but he's still got that like really nerdy hair design that everybody drew in the 70s for people with like for men with not short hair but like normal length hair, like kind of parted to one side kind of thing.
Was it He-Man hair?
No, it was the normal kind of like slightly long hair, the way that they did it on everybody except Peter Parker.
Oh, right. Yeah, everyone had that. Yeah. Tony Stark had it.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
if you had black hair, they always drew it the same way.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind doing a comic about Nightwing in the 70s and doing Disco because I really enjoy the 70s for some reason.
Hey, I'm gonna.
You know how I feel about collars.
I'm gonna give you a challenge right now. Work that into volume 3 of White Knight. It doesn't have to be him at a disco, but I think you can figure out a reason to have like relaxed fit Nightwing with his shirt open and the collar just like flowing in the wind.
So I was gonna just to take the cheap way out and basically have him go through his lair, and you just see a bunch of his old costumes in the back, and one of them is the 70s disco. But you want him actually wearing it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I don't. Putting it in the background, anybody can do that. Find a way to work it into the story.
It's a cop out.
These are my important contributions to volume 3.
Thanks.
Show his butt a lot. Everybody likes his butt for some reason.
Yeah, I guess that started with I forget the name of the writer, female writer, of course. But yeah, anyway. So one thing that I loved about this episode, well, I loved a lot of it actually. Although some of the dialogue was really cringy, like when Catwoman is talking to Batman and they're going back and forth about Robin, the boy wonder, and she goes, "Well, now he's a man wonder." Okay. Whoa!
Yeah.
That gave me atomic diarrhea. That was so bad.
Yeah, that was a weird scene because they really dialed up the sexiness on Catwoman for this episode, and I don't know if that is how she is for the rest of the series or if it's just this one because she's kind of trying to seduce him a little bit into helping her. But yeah, that scene was really interesting where she's getting weird and sexy about Nightwing. Like, while he's still there, she's doing this to Batman. And Batman is just angry about it.
Yeah. When do you think Batman and Robin and Nightwing started to put their plan together?
I would assume before he goes to her place.
Okay.
Because I think making it look like they were dumping the tail of Batman and Batgirl, I think, is part of the plan.
When he says to Catwoman, stay away from Nightwing, that's obviously the plan is in action, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like that was meant to push her more towards, okay. Yeah. That cringy dialogue aside, I did like that you kind of, because they haven't really talked about what happened yet. So there's this tension between the characters and they're teasing it, which I like. And even though they are edgy towards each other, they still manage to overcome it and work together in the end. So even though they're far apart, they're not that far apart.
Right. Yeah, it's this is an interesting kind of weird episode to introduce Nightwing with. Because I almost feel like that history of what happened between them story could have been, if you had stretched this into 2 parts, I think you could have put that story into this one because of the way that it ends, because they start off kind of brisk with each other and at the end it's like, oh, they're working together because they're not really that far apart. Like since there's no real understanding of the threshold of what happened, I think it lends itself to fleshing it out and then having that reconciliation sort of be the end of the story. But I don't know if you really need to know that stuff in this episode because they play it so well that they are clearly, there's something going on. He's clearly left. There is a bit of a rift between them. But like you said, they're not that far apart. I think it's just that they don't really, that stuff is in there, but they don't really do anything with it is the problem with it for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're still planting seeds for the payoff episode where you get to Old Wounds or whatever it's called.
Yeah. I always find the introductions of stuff like this in these shows on this show specifically is so weird because like we even talked about it when we started the last series. Robin just shows up. He's just there. Like the first Robin episode is just like the second or third episode of Batman the animated series, and they never talk about it until later. And here he's just shows up again. Do they even refer to him as Dick? Like you could, if you were a kid watching this, you might not even realize it's Dick Grayson.
Yeah. Does she call him Dick when she visits him in his sweet Japanese apartment?
Yeah. He's definitely going through that phase. He's probably like 22. He's watching a lot of Gundam Wing at this point.
The Dragon Door is amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, you got to have the katana sword collection on the side. And I love his escape tunnel or whatever with the motorcycle. I think that stuff's really cool.
I will say, in the early days of eBay, I spent most of my time on eBay looking at katana sets that I could buy. Because it was like the perfect time for that, where I was like, yeah, man, that would be so, I would love to have that.
So did that start with the Highlander for you?
Oh, totally. I mean, it was a combination of Highlander and Ninja Turtles, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I was going to also throw in Snake Eyes for me.
Yep.
Yeah, between the Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe had a Ninja Force, whatever, where they had like 6 ninjas, including Snake Eyes, which I loved. Storm Shadow, of course, and then Highlander. It just seemed like Highlander was the third was the nail in the coffin for me. Like, all right, yeah, that's the sweetest sword ever. Period.
Yeah, I spent most of my early days on eBay looking at Highlander ripoff swords, being like, "That's such a ripoff. I would never buy that. That's such a piece of garbage."
My art dealer and friend Jeff has a katana, and I don't know if it's real or not, but I don't think it is, because he said if you want to get a real one, it's going to cost like a ton of money, and you have to get it made in Japan, and I don't even think they're allowed to sell it to outsiders. There's I don't know if that's just what nerds tell each other to make their katanas more valuable. Or
he might have just been watching Kill Bill like half asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I love that movie. But my friend, I had another friend who came from a lot of money, and he had a real katana sword, and it even came with different sharpening stones.
Oh, no
And there's
kidding.
actually a series of different rocks that you're supposed to use, and there's a whole ritual that goes with it. But the finest stones, like the very end of the process, you grab these stones that are like the size of fingernails, and they're really, you just like use just your index finger and your thumb, and you be really careful, and then you polish the blade just with those two little rocks or whatever. It seemed really cool. I mean, he had more money than he knew what to do with. I'll just put it that way. It was super cool, but yeah, he was the only person I've ever seen with a quote unquote real samurai sword.
I think a friend of mine might have one. It doesn't sound like it's that intense, but he definitely has one that is more than just one you would buy off of eBay. Because I don't remember if he went to Japan or something, but he brought it with him to college. Like, he had it in his dorm room, and he was showing it to me, and I'm like, this thing is, like, you could feel the difference. Like, it was just a solidly made actual, weapon.
Yeah, balanced at the hilt.
Yeah.
There's I love watching the way those things are made, because there's two different types of metal in there, and one metal at the back of the blade, it shrinks faster. So when they quench it in the water at the end, the curve pops out. Like, it's flat when it goes in, and it comes out curved, and that's when you like the essence of the sword reveals itself, or whatever. Like, the sword maker had a whole religion about it. I'm not going to argue with him. He fucking knows what he's doing. But yeah, it was really cool to see like the quenching process at the end.
Yeah, I remember in high school I did like a whole paper on the sword making process.
That might be one of the nerdiest things that I've ever heard.
Hey, when you're in high school, you got to find things you're interested in to write at length about. So,
did you ever get art assignments and you would do your best to try to fit in? How do I justify drawing a superhero?
No, I actually hated doing art-based stuff at school, because anytime there was like a group project, it was always like, so Clay will make the poster, and I'm like, no, I don't want to make the fucking poster. I did in fourth grade. In fourth grade, I do remember we did a project that involved magnets, and I was like, I'll draw the poster, and I drew like a 5-foot drawing of Magneto. And that was our poster, was like this explanation of magnets, but I'm also going to draw Magneto. So, but yeah, the thing I found so interesting is that they cracked the code by blending metals. So it's like certain metals were too soft and other metals were too hard, but blending them together and like folding them thousands of times is what makes the strength of the. This is real. I don't know how we ended up talking about this, but.
No, because we both love katanas.
Yeah, and we want to hang out at Nightwing's house.
This is why I always thought Nightwing was half Asian or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched these episodes more than I did the other Robin ones for some reason. But I just got into my head that, I don't know, like his spiky black hair, it just seems like he was half Asian for some reason.
Yeah, he does kind of feel like they're kind of presenting him that way, actually. Yeah, now that you say that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't read a lot of the old comics, so it might be crystal clear to real fans that he's just a white guy.
Yeah,
but, to me,
I'm pretty sure Richard Grayson is about as waspy as you're gonna get.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh man. But yeah, I loved it. If I had to draw a sequence, I might draw him like getting into his gear and getting on his motorcycle. I'd probably redesign the bike a little bit.
I was going to ask
you. Just going through a sequence.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you liked that bike, because I actually liked the bike. It kind of reminded me of the Tron bikes a little bit.
Yeah, the bike is really well done. They nailed the ellipses on the wheels, and then we get back into perspective. But they've always had a really clean way of handling car wheels, and in this season. And I think that except for the Batmobile itself, I think most of the other vehicles are really well done.
Yeah, it's pretty good looking. Yeah.
But yeah, the way the bike leans, it feels very light. It fits him very well. Like, it's just designed. It's clean. It all works.
I thought his exit from his place was really interesting, because it's like you gotta make sure you are focused when you leave that building, because it shoots you out immediately onto like the curve of a wall. So you have to make sure you hit that shit perfect every time, otherwise you come out of your house and just explode.
Right, the old dried up riverbed escape.
Yes, yeah.
I wonder if like having car demolition is as easy as in dried up riverbeds as movies led us to believe.
In what sense? Like putting a bunch of cars down there and smashing
T2 and Fast
sure.
and Furious. A lot of movies, like the cars seem to end up having car chases in dried up riverbeds in a city. Mm-hmm. So it's just like this concrete highway that's sort of curved at the edges, and it's perfect for destruction. And I don't know how easy it actually is to get a car out there.
Yeah, I have no idea. Because they do it in Greece. They have that big car chase, car race in the thing there in Greece. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it might be just a convention from movies, or it might be that easy to put a car down there. I don't know. Anyone who lives in L.A., let us know.
Yeah, like I'll bet you. I mean, at least in T2, they were able to get to it by shooting this. He shoots the lock on a gate,
right? Yeah,
plows through it on his motorcycle, and then jumps down, which is a fucking amazing scene, by the way.
When he jumps down and then they slow motion the truck driving off behind him. Doesn't get much better than that.
When I watch T2, I start with the beginning of that scene. I'll just watch that scene. I think that is one of the most amazing sequences. And at the time when that scene begins, you're not supposed to know which one's the evil robot at this point, you know? And the fact that one is dressed to be good and isn't, oh my God, my 12-year-old brain like exploded.
Yeah, we could probably do we could do multiple shows talking about Terminator 2 if we wanted to, I think.
Yeah. If you and Wes ever do that, let me get in on that, because that was the movie that made me want to try writing.
Oh, sure.
Because I said, I don't think this is the best written movie ever, but I think it's so solid, and if the action is strong enough, that I can do this. Like, I'm not going to write Hamlet or Shakespeare or Amadeus, but I think if I studied hard enough, I could at least write T2.
Yeah.
Throw in some cool ideas, some interesting dialogue, some cool action scenes. I think to make a comic book like that is something that I can be capable of. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm not trying to be Garth Ennis. I just need to be able to do T2. That's kind of when I started wanting to write. Yeah,
I mean, it's not a bad bar to shoot for.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to? Oh, what would you draw on this one?
I was conflicted on this one because there's a scene where they get into a fight where Batgirl throws out those smoke pellets, and they start fighting in the smoke. And I first wrote down I would draw the smoke fight. And then I was like, that's such a cop-out, though, because it's like, oh, yeah, smoke, sure. I don't have to draw anything difficult. But then 2 scenes later, there's that boat chase scene. And I was like, that would be fun. Drawing Nightwing chasing down Catwoman, and they're kind of tussling on a boat while the speedboats go. That would be pretty fun. Because I was thinking that would be really fun, and I don't know how I would do it. And so I think that would be one that would really kind of push me and challenge me to figure out something interesting.
That's a good answer, man. My other answer was another water-related one. Nightwing and Catwoman fall through the roof and go into a pool, and they're hiding from gunfire under a diving board, which is pretty smart. I don't know where else you would go. But I always enjoyed that sequence.
Yeah. Doing bullets going through water while the character's underwater, I think would be pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. They had that bit in there, too.
But yeah, overall, I think this is, I don't know how much we actually talked about the episode, but it's pretty good. It's, I would give it a solid 3. I think it's the relationship stuff is pretty interesting, and I really like that scene with Dick and Barbara at his house. The story itself is not that remarkable, but I think it does what it does pretty well.
Yeah, her plan seemed a little bit. So she wanted to steal this green diamond, the cat diamond or whatever, and instead of doing it herself, she somehow got a hold of it in South America, stuffed it in this illegal artifacts, and so it got it into this country by hiding it, basically. But then she had to track the artifacts down, deal with the mob, the South American gangsters or whatever. I'm like, if you had your hand on that thing in South America, why not just put it in your pocket and bring it with you?
Right. Yeah. There has to be an easier way to get it into the country.
Yeah. But at this point in the story, it's like, whatever. It's a kid's show.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think a 3 out of 5 is fine. I think the animation was amazing, but
it looks
3 out of 5.
It looks really good. It's for this show, I feel like they've been leaning a lot more on just kind of like showcase animation stuff and action sequences than they have like their stories really. And I think this is a good balance of both, where the animation looks great, the character designs look good for the most part, the interactions are good, and I think it's just a solid episode.
Though, I gotta say, when Babs is talking to him in his apartment and she sees him get dressed as Nightwing, this is the first time where we acknowledge that one of them knows who the other one is, at least.
They also kind of acknowledge that they were in some sort of relationship, because when he leaves, he's like, you know how to lock up, which implies that she has been there a lot.
Oh, I totally missed that, but yeah. I just thought she was good with closing doors.
Well, maybe that too. I don't know.
No. How did I think of my my spinner comment for the previous episode, but totally missed this?
Yeah, well,
Thanks.
My actually, before we round out, I just wanted to mention my favorite scene in this episode is at the beginning when they're fighting on the docks and that one guy's running away and Batman's just leaning against the boxes.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
Very passive aggressively is like, he's all yours. I think it's extremely out of character for Batman to do that, but I did think it was fun.
Yeah, I love that scene. Even as a kid, I thought that was great. And I don't know what it's doing is it's saying Batman could totally have taken you down, but he's choosing not to. He's kind of fucking with you a little bit.
Right.
And letting Nightwing know that he was ahead of him,
Right, yeah. And also just, Nightwing doesn't want me to interfere, so I'm not going to interfere at all,
Right.
But it's good character work, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and the one silly shot was after Batman leaves, Nightwing and Catwoman are going to go do stuff, but he grabs her whip, he looks at the bottom of it, and he takes off the tracer that Batman put there. I like that moment because he knew what Batman's MO would be.
Right.
So they put it on her cat, and the cat goes away. But he's looking down at Batman and Batgirl in the car, just sitting around doing nothing.
I did think that was really funny because I'm assuming that Batman and Batgirl didn't just park outside of Catwoman's place, so they had to go to wherever Batman was. And so
they literally did. They parked out of her place with the hood forward. So they're just sitting there in an alleyway with nothing to talk about.
I was going to say, assuming they didn't park at her place, and so then they had to go and find them. If Batgirl's looking at the tracer, she should be like, it says they're right above us.
That's what makes me think that they're parked literally right outside.
Yeah, they have to be. I'd like to think Batgirl called that out, and Batman was just like, pretend like we don't know. Just look straight ahead and don't say anything, and maybe they'll go away.
Yeah, I mean, at this point the plan's already in motion, so they both knew that this was her taking the taking the bait.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, pretty good. Not pretty good episode. I think one of the better ones. I think these two have both been. Well, the last three have all been pretty good. This one, Double Talk, and Never Fear, I think, have been really solid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this season is really good, but it just misses the human emotional element in some way. It's just, like you said, it goes more for action set pieces than it does for character moments. So as much as great as these are, they just kind of come up short with me in a lot of ways. It's hard to put my finger on.
Yeah. I'm interested to see how things, if they change at all, or if they stay in that kind of colder sort of approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait till we get to the dumb ones like Critters and what else is there? Yeah, when the action itself starts to suck and the set pieces get really bizarre, then the episodes really fall apart.
Interesting. Okay, I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah,
we've got the Killer Croc baby doll ones coming up pretty soon, so that'll be a fun one.
Oh man, I'm gonna do my best not to make Spinner jokes.
Okay, that would probably be best for all of us.
For our ratings purposes, yeah.
But I think that's gonna do it for You Scratch My Back and Double Talk. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for joining me, Sean.
Yep, thanks for having me here, man.
Yeah, well, next time we'll be back with Joker's Millions and Growing Pains. See you guys.
Let the good times roll!